Morning, everyone. Hello, Kendra. When everyone's ready. Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today as I release the 2023 budget as our administration is proposing. It's sent over to the legislature for their review and comment. I'm pleased to be joined by our our Director of Budget Management and Finance, Robert Keating, the Deputy Budget Director, Mark Cornell, as well as the Director of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library System, John Spears, and the Chief Financial Officer for the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library System, Ken Stone. And as always, you may recognize, we're also joined by Kendra Schmidt from Deaf Access Services, who's providing us American Sign Language this morning. So let's just jump right into it because we have a lot of things to talk about. There's a pie chart up here which shows the revenue sources for Erie County. In total, the budget is approximately $1.8 billion, and this is all the revenue lines to show exactly where it's coming from, with the largest portion of it being sales tax. Erie County derives significantly more money in sales tax than we do in property tax. I think you've heard me say this over the years. A decision was made decades ago to keep our property tax levy at a lower amount and have a higher sales tax compared to other counties. As a result, we have, as you'll see, one of the lowest property tax rates in all of New York State, and we're generating approximately 50% of all our revenue just from sales tax. There actually are a number of revenue lines in part of this budget that are increasing. There's a 10.5% increase in state aid as a result of adjustments for programs that the state funds. There's a 9% increase in federal aid. A lot of this is related to inflation and changes in dollars and cents that are determined by the federal and state government with regards to programs. We're only projecting a 1% sales tax growth for next year due to what we feel will be recessionary conditions, including the potential for our country to enter into a recession. We're not using any of our fund balance to balance the budget, and the property tax levy will be at a combined $329 million, which, as you'll see in a moment, is one of the lowest tax rates that we are ever aware of, certainly in modern county history. So the property tax rate will be $3.92 per thousand. This is a continuation of the dropping of the property tax rate. It's actually a 40-cent reduction from the property tax rate in 2022, and it's significantly lower than it was, even at more than $1 lower than it was in 2018. We continue to offer relief to homeowners. We know inflation is having an impact on our community. The county does not set the assessment and the assessed values for homes and businesses. The cities and the towns do. We can't control the assessments. What we can control is the property tax rate, and we have lowered the property tax rate significantly. It will now be $3.92 per thousand, which is the lowest property tax rate in modern county history. We can go back basically to the 1930s, and we cannot find a tax rate lower than that. I don't know what it was like when Grover Cleveland was the sheriff of Erie County in the 1800s, but I can tell you in modern county history it is the lowest property tax rate ever. To give you just a kind of a line graph here, this will show you the property tax rate as it pertains from 2008 to 2023. So you can actually see there was a slight increase in the property tax rate during the Chris Collins administration. So County Executive Collins increased it from $4.94 per thousand to $5.03 per thousand. And we held the line on taxes for a long time, then started dropping them, the tax rate based on the 2015 budget. And you'll see we are now dropping it substantially to $3.92 per thousand. It is a 1.11 or $1.11 per thousand decrease since 2012. That is a 22% decrease in the county property tax rate. So I want people to understand that we are taking this seriously. We know that people are feeling the squeeze of inflation and the issues associated with it, and we're taking action to address it on a local level. It is the lowest property tax rate among any county in Western New York. I think a lot of people assume, well, the other counties will have lower tax rates. They don't. Actually, for some of them, they're almost 3 to 4 times as high as what they are in Erie County. Our property tax rate is or will be $3.92 next year. We're $4.32 now. The rest of the numbers you see here for the other counties are actually their rates for 2022. So not only are we the lowest right now, substantially, we are significantly lower than almost every other county in Western New York. I want to remind people that. They think, oh, it must be much more expensive to own a home in Erie County. It doesn't, as compared to the rest of the other counties in Western New York for the county property tax rate. We don't set the school district's taxes. We don't set the city or town taxes. We can only control the county rates. And when it comes to the county property tax rate, it is significantly lower than every other county in Western New York. And that's something I, and as well as the rest of my administration, are very proud of. So in 2022, this is an example of the 57 counties outside of New York City. We are, I think, the 15th lowest property tax rate in the counties of outside of New York City. And after the reduction in 2023, we will drop to the 13th lowest property tax rate among all counties. We are lower than Monroe County, where Rochester is. We're lower than Onondaga County, where Syracuse is. We're lower than Albany County. Or excuse me, we'll be almost the same as Albany County. But for all the other major upstate communities, we are significantly lower. There are some, especially in Long Island and downstate, where the assessed value of the properties is ridiculously high. Their tax rates are a little lower. But when you compare it to pretty much all of the counties in upstate New York, we are one of the lowest. And I wanted to give an example of what this means for homeowners, because often you say, oh, the tax rate's going down, but it doesn't affect our taxes. Well, it does. So Cheektowaga, there's been a lot of discussion about what's gone on Cheektowaga in the last year and a half with regards to assessed values. People are going to assume, oh, my taxes are going to go up in Cheektowaga as it pertains to Erie County. Here's a house on Barbados Drive. It's kind of an average house in Cheektowaga. Zillow's market value was $275,000. The assessed value for 22 was 188. The preliminary value for 23 is 217 because it went up. But guess what? Because of us dropping the county tax rate, the homeowner of this home on Barbados Drive in Cheektowaga will pay a little less than $5 in taxes than what they paid last year. I know it's not huge. It's not a ridiculously big amount. But if you asked the homeowner in Cheektowaga that are you expecting to pay more in their county taxes in 2023 than 22, they'd probably say substantially more because the assessed value of their property went up by a lot. Well, in effect, they're actually going to pay $4.73 less. Here's a home in town of Boston, Lower East Hill Road, nice house in the town of Boston. Recently saw changes in their assessed value in the last couple of years. There will be a $44.17 reduction compared to what they are paying currently. Another example of how the property tax for the county will be less than what they paid in 2022. Now, this one goes up, but I wanted to show this one because the town of Lancaster has seen ridiculously increasing home assessments. The values of the homes in the town of Lancaster have shot up tremendously in the last couple of years. This homeowner will see a $16 increase. So we didn't want to say every homeowner is going to see a decrease because usually what happens when you do reassessments is 1/3 of the homes go up, 1/3 go down, and 1/3 stay the same. That's kind of usually what happens. So we did want to give an example. But based on what you would expect in the town of Lancaster, people would have thought there have been hundreds of dollars of increases in the county taxes for this home in Lancaster. It is going up, but only $16. Tonawanda. Here's a house in Tonawanda, really nice house, Belmont Avenue. Because of it changes as it goes for the equalization rate, the assessed value is pretty low, but we know we have to adjust these based on the state equalization rate. So you would thought, oh, because they haven't seen tremendous amount of changes lately in their assessed value, the equalization rate would mean that they'd end up paying a heck of a lot more. I almost said something. And in fact, they're actually going to pay $20 less. $19.89 less in 23 than they did in 22. And here's a home in West Seneca, very similar to a lot of other homes in West Seneca. Once again, the assessed value is lower because they haven't had recent reassessments, so that means New York State's equalization rate kicks in to basically increase the value of their home for assessed value as it pertains to the county. You would think then that they would end up paying more in taxes. It's actually, tax will be $11.07 less at the $3.92 tax rate for the county than it was last year at the $4.32 tax rate in the county. So I wanted to show the actual examples of homeowners across Erie County. We've got rural communities, and then here we have, of course, the city of Buffalo. City of Buffalo went through a big reassessment. This is the first year that the county will be taking advantage, so to speak, of the reassessed values associated with the city of Buffalo's properties. This house on Woodward Avenue, beautiful home in the Parkside area. Assessed value $365,000. So there was a big jump up, we know, in the assessed value because of the impact that's really going to have on the county, but they're not going to see an increase in their taxes as it pertains to Erie County. It's less than $1 they're going to pay in 2023. But I think it's important for the public to understand that just because your assessed value of your property goes up does not necessarily mean that you're going to pay more in property taxes. And here's a good example of it. This is the property was reassessed for the city taxes effective 2022, but it's really the first year that the county is taking advantage of the reassessed values in the city of Buffalo. Because by the time they finished the assessment in the city a couple of years ago, it was too late for us to apply it for the 2022 tax year. We had to wait till 2023. After all was said and done, I'm sure this homeowner was expecting a big increase in their property taxes for the county. They're actually going to pay 96 cents less. It's not huge, but at a time when all costs are going up, we're finding ways to control the costs associated with people's tax rates. So the property tax levy is $329,709,000. We are under the New York State mandated tax cap. Of the $329 million, $301 million of it goes directly to Erie County Services. The remaining $28 million goes to the library. That we are increasing the share of the levy growth to the library by 7%. That's much greater than the levy growth for Erie County. As a result, the library system will receive $1.8 million more in total additional funding for 2023 than they received in 2022. And because of an adjustment that we were able to make to allow for an increased amount to the library while still staying in the tax cap, we are giving them $1.3 million more as part of the library levy than what we normally would have provided to them based on the formula we use. We usually provide a 2% increase to the library. However, because of the issues associated with inflation, and we know the impact it's having on the library and their staff and the costs associated with the library, we've made a one-time only adjustment to give them a significant amount more. So they'll receive $1.8 million more next year than they received last year, which is $1.3 million more than they would have expected. We are joined, as I said, here today by Library Director John Spears, as well as the Chief Financial Officer Ken Stone. And at this time, I'd ask them to come up to the podium and just talk about what impact this will have on the services for the library and what they're going to be able to do with this additional revenue. So, Mr. Director. Thank you. Mr. CFO.
First, I want to thank County Executive Poloncarz for this assistance to the library during this time. This is going to be a tremendous boon to the services we're able to offer the residents of Erie County. With our 37 locations, it can be difficult. But with this money, we will be able to expand our materials budget, purchase more books, more e-books, the things that people want. We'll be able to increase our outreach to the community, and then also make the materials that we have and the services we offer even more relevant to the people in Erie County. So thank you for the assistance that you're providing here. I know that we can be trusted with it.
Excellent. Thank you. When you get the CEO and the CFO both smiling, it must be good. Having been the CFO of the county, I know that you don't always agree with the CEO. So expenses. Where's the money going? So that little less than $8 billion of general fund, and as we'll explain, there's a few other funds out there like our sewer divisions, which are separate. But the vast majority of this expenses goes for health and human services. It's actually 44% of the county's budget goes to health and human services. It's $873 million. And then there's 24% approximately, which goes to economic and community development as well as sales tax sharing. That's $469 million. I think people assume that the vast majority of county government is parks and roads and libraries. It's not. It's actually health and human services. It's our Department of Social Services providing assistance for those at their time of need. And so that's what we spend our money on. And I find it a little interesting. You see general services and countywide. That's a combination of different things, but that really only makes up 12% of our budget. And that's kind of what people think is county government when you talk about parks, emergency services, things like that, the roads. It only makes up 12% of our budget. It's the health and human services that makes up the vast majority of county budget. So the full budget is broken down in a couple ways, but the general fund, which is everything that you saw on the page before, was $1.8 billion. It's a 2.7% increase over the 2022 adjusted budget. There are 103 new full-time positions, 50 for independently elected officials, the vast majority of which are going to the sheriff's office, as I'll talk about. And there's 90 position upgrades, including 44 for independently elected officials. The vast majority of those are going to the district attorney's office, as I'll talk about. So it's not really a tremendous increase. We're basically back to where we were pre-pandemic. That's what this budget is. It's getting us back to where we were pre-pandemic because we cut a lot out of the budget in 2020. And when we were doing the 2021 budget, we cut a lot of jobs. We cut a lot of lines. We're getting ourselves back to where we were pre-pandemic. And that's a good thing because the public is demanding for us to invest in roads. The public's demanding for us to invest in our parks, the people's mandates. And we're doing that. So just a little breakdown of where the positions are going, the new positions. As you will see from this, almost a little less than 50% are going to the sheriff's office. There's some increases in the social services office, the public works department, health, but in most areas there's really not many new jobs at all. And then upgrades, these are adjustments of positions. These are primarily given so that we can recruit people. We're having difficulty in a lot of areas recruiting people because the salary structure for the county was lower than what is offered in other governments or in the private sector, so there's been significant changes in some areas, primarily the district attorney, which I'll talk about in a second. So the sheriff's office, you may have seen a story about this. There are 57 total new jobs for the sheriff's office, the vast majority of which are going for jail management to assist the problems that they have with mandatory overtime among the corrections officers at the jail and the holding center. The holding center is the location downtown. The jail is in Alden. I should say the correctional facility in Alden. Though sometimes they'll have people that are waiting for their trial to go at Alden and some people who are actually post-conviction that are at the holding center downtown. So we just call it jail management correctional facilities. I've taken the sheriff at his word that they need to address this. There is burnout that's going on. There are people that are leaving. There are people that are taking long-term FMLA because they do not want to come in and work 16-hour days for 4 or 5 days in a row because of mandatory overtime requirements. So we are adding positions to help eliminate that. The sheriff has given me his word he's going to address this. I thank him for that. I thank him for his kind comments in an article about these increases. We don't do this lightly because we know that there are costs associated with new positions. But we are doing this to address a significant concern, which is the burnout of the correctional facility workers. We know that they need help, and we're sending them help at the beginning of this year. The police services, which is also the road patrol division and the investigative functions of the sheriff's office, is basically getting one new team, administrative assistant for the office, but 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, and 6 new deputies to help with the overtime that's existed in the road patrol division. And then the correctional health has 1 nurse educator. The sheriff's office, rightly, under new Sheriff Garcia, created a new professional standards division, in some ways an internal affairs division. It had been called for many years, and he created it. They're adjusting it. So if you look at it, it'll look like we're deleting 14 employees and creating 14 employees. We're just moving them in the budget for budgetary purposes to this new professional services division. I commend Sheriff Garcia for the creation of the professional services division, and I thank him for working with us. And I certainly thank him for his commitment to reduce the mandatory overtime and overtime, which has been a problem for a long time in the sheriff's office's correctional facilities. District attorney is seeing a significant increase in their budget, 2.3 million, actually 2.4 million basically, with 32 total position upgrades. The primary reason is they're having difficulties filling the positions, and then when they train individuals and they become like mid-level district attorneys, they leave. They leave to go practice in the private sector. So I've spoken to District Attorney Flynn on multiple occasions about this, and we're making some significant changes in the district attorney's office to increase the salaries, to give them an opportunity to hire people for the lower level district attorney positions. When I say lower level, I mean I should say starting level, and then keep people there once they've trained them and they're in the district attorney's office for a number of years. I thank District Attorney Flynn for working with our office to show us the need, why this was necessary, and to make recommendations, the vast majority of which, not all, we followed. And then there's, as we talked about other departments, there's only 14 new positions and position upgrades around the rest of county government. So the vast majority of our new investment is for public safety and law enforcement. It's to address the issues that we know exist in the sheriff's office, to address the issues that we know in the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office has many more responsibilities now than they just had 4 or 5 years ago with the discovery law changes, and we are investing in public safety and law enforcement. I know it's a particular key issue among the public. We are a little different than the normal police departments. We do have the Sheriff's Road Patrol, but we provide significant services in the law enforcement and public safety end, and we're investing in those areas. Big change is the salary structure associated for managerial confidential or appointed high-level officials. We are creating a salary system for them. They will no longer be considered hourly employees. We had to make an adjustment based on the Fair Labor Standards Act. We had to do some adjustments legally to do that. We've put that in the budget document. So assuming it gets approved by the legislature as is, basically all policymakers, those that are top-level appointed managers, not civil servants, but the top-level appointed managers, will no longer be receiving overtime. They will become salaried, and they'll have a locked-in salary. For a number of them, they are actually being brought up to the civil service scale, our CSCA. Technically, if you're a job group 16 in Erie County, civil servant, and you're a job group 16 managerial confidential, you would actually make less as the managerial confidential, the appointed person, than the civil servant. We're equalizing them, makes sense, that they be the same if you're from 16 to 16. So we're giving a slight increase to those individuals. The sheriff's office are on a different rate. They're actually a higher rate. That's staying the same. But this will have an effect so that the issue that we saw across various areas, not just related to COVID and those that responded to COVID, but among various areas, we hopefully will see the elimination of overtime for this situation as we saw in the past. You've seen this slide from me before. It really hasn't changed. 90% of the county budget is mandated by New York State and the federal government. So a lot of people go, well, what is that? I don't expect it. I'm not going to go through this whole list, but it's a lot. And the big one, Medicaid family assistance, we're assisting individuals in their time of need, all the way down to correctional health is a required aspect of it. Maintenance of public assistance records. Lots of things that the federal and state government require us to do, and these are just a listing of the top ones. There's even more, and if we went through every single one that was mandated by line, we'd probably be here for a long time. Healthcare costs are increasing like the rest of the world's. Erie County in 2009 with County Executive Chris Collins entered into an agreement that said the county would pay a minimum of $16 million, and that would probably be it, though there was a way of adjusting it. Well, it's been increasing. The 2023 cost estimate is we will pay ECMC under this agreement that County Executive Collins entered into in 2009, $56.2 million. It's a 247% increase in just 14 years since County Executive Collins declared that Erie County was out of the hospital business. We don't run the hospital, so we're kind of out of the day-to-day management, but we subsidize it, and next year to the tune of $56.2 million. People's mandates libraries, we already talked about this. We are increasing the levy of the library system to give them $1.8 million more than they received in '22, $1.3 million more than they would have received if we followed the previous formula, as well as we have a major capital project scheduled for next year. We are going to replace the roof at the Central Library in downtown Buffalo, which is owned by the people of Erie County. We all know that replacing roofs is an expensive job. I don't think any of us homeowners ever had to replace a roof for $2 million, but that's the estimate it's going to cost to replace the roof for $2 million. So you won't have to worry about any leaking on the books and other supplies. Arts and culturals, we are providing approximately $7.5 million in arts and cultural funding, including to 13 new organizations and 69 returning organizations, as well as $650,000 that we previously announced for Klein Ann's Music Hall's capital campaign. Our parks, we continue to invest in the parks through the Renew Plan that we announced in 2021, and we're going to do $2.8 million in new capital funding in 2022. This is 23. This is in addition to the $14 million we have set aside under the Renew Plan, which is going to go next year. Lots of projects, big projects, are going to take effect next year. Due to the popularity of the park ranger program, we're adding a senior park ranger, one additional park ranger for the park ranger program, as well as a general crew chief in the parks, and 4 new seasonal positions, including 2 lifeguards and 2 golf course supervisors. I will note that while the city of Buffalo and other municipalities had trouble hiring lifeguards, we did not. We had a full complement of lifeguards this past year at Went Beach, and we expect to do that again next year. The Renew Plan, I briefly highlighted this. $123 million was allocated in late 2021 for a lot of projects. Many of those projects are really taking effect now and will take effect next year. So we allocated the money in 2021. It's just been sitting there, but is really being spent now. If you go by the convention center, you see the work that's going on to replace the facade. New greenhouses will be at the Botanical Gardens, new highway barn at our Harlem Highway Division, lots of other things that are going on. And the big one that should start next spring is the $34 million investment to create the new ErieNet open access broadband system for all of Erie County, approximately 400 miles of broadband lines across all of Erie County, and that should start next spring. And then we have big projects in our sewer division, including $31 million to ensure we have clean water in Lake Erie. I think we saw the story recently about how Lake Erie still isn't as clean as it could be. Well, one of the biggest ways that affects the cleanliness of the lakes outside of agricultural runoff is issues associated with discharges from sewage treatment plants. Erie County owns some major sewage treatment plants, and we're going to invest $31 million to ensure that they are at their cleanest capacity, so to speak. Highways and roads and other stuff. $85 million in total capital projects, which is an $8 million increase from last year, of which $37.6 million is highway and bridge projects. Here's a listing of some projects that are going on next year. Kenmore Avenue in Tonawanda, Abbott and Willett Roads in Hamburg and Lackawanna, Goodrich Road in Clarence, $2.3 million for Sharp Street Bridge, just one bridge, $2.3 million. I want to highlight that. Bridges are very expensive. Bridges are very expensive. And the Sharp Street Bridge is not a huge bridge, but it costs $2.3 million to replace just one bridge. $1.7 million for Vermont Street in the town of Holland, and I want to thank the town of Holland because they've agreed to take over Vermont Street from the county after we have repaired it. This street, if you know where Vermont Street is, it goes straight up the hill from Main Street in the town of Holland. It's not always the easiest to upkeep because it gets a lot of runoff, but we're going to invest $1.7 million in Vermont Street, and the town of Holland has agreed to take over ownership of that street and the cost associated with it in the future. We're investing in our highway divisions, 9 new positions, including 5 new crew chiefs, because we basically have 5 new crews, 2 sign shop fabricators and other things, just investing in our road and bridge infrastructure and the people that work it. SUNY Erie, we're maintaining our $19.8 million contribution, though we are reducing the community college chargebacks, which will save taxpayers money because that eventually would have been sent back to taxpayers. And then we are investing $6 million in capital for community college next year, $3 million to replace their ERP computer system, $2.5 million for their phase 2 of the SUNY Erie Facilities Master Plan, and then $500,000 towards a $5 million new sports field complex at the North Campus, in which it's a combination between Erie County, SUNY Erie, New York State, as well as Amherst, because Amherst is contributing $2 million towards this. It will be used for the community college during community college activities, and then when it's not, the town of Amherst will have opportunities to use it. The first phase of that project will be soccer fields and softball, baseball diamonds, and eventually there's a goal to add other things there in the future. So that's a big project that's coming forth next year. Debt retirement, we've retired a lot of debt. When I came into office, Erie County had $416 million in principal debt. We've retired $158 million since 2012. We are now down at the end of this year to $258 million, and we recently have been upgraded to AA, the highest rating that Erie County has had since really we got its first credit ratings in the 1970s, which will allow us to retire more debt in the future. And this is a nice little chart that shows the Erie County debt, what we've retired, the total that's new issued, and and how much we have at any one day. So that's a big thing that we've been able to retire debt because that saves us debt service costs in the long run. And we may have another big project coming forward that will require us to potentially borrow some money. And I'm proud to say that we've retired during my administration $158 million in debt. It's a lot of money. So the budget is fiscally responsible, provides for the important services of our community, reduces the tax rate to the lowest tax rate in modern county history, does stay under the tax cap for New York State. It funds the people's mandates like libraries, arts and cultural, roads and bridges, parks, and provides a major new investment in our law enforcement capabilities to ensure that our staff are not getting burned out and treated poorly because they've got to work ridiculous hours or that they leave because they can make more money elsewhere. It's a 4-year plan. One final thing. The 4-year plan is also part of the budget because we still have a 4-year plan that we provide to the Buffalo and Erie County Fiscal Stability, or the Erie County Fiscal Stability Authority, and it projects 2% property tax levy growth in future years, modest sales tax growth, and if there are small deficits, they can be easily closed. So it's all an example of how we're leading the way once again for relief for our homeowners as well as ensuring that we can provide the services in a fiscally responsible manner. That I'll open up to any questions. First on topic. Any on-topic questions?
Yeah, Mark, I'll just throw
Ron.
that out
Go
there.
ahead.
Obviously, again, you're citing the decrease in the property tax rate, things of that nature, showing all the examples. Some people, though, still may wonder about the significant increases that you got from the federal and state governments. I realize a lot of that was COVID relief. We all know that has to be used.
Some.
Right. Going out further, can you sustain these lower taxes? And can that money be used in any way to leverage even lower property taxes in the future? Is that possible at all?
Well, you cannot use American Rescue Plan funds to give a tax cut. You can't do that by law. We did see increases, not just regarding to what we received in the American Rescue Plan, but we received increases just on the cost of living adjustments that the federal government has for a lot of the programs that we get a portion and provide. So it's not as if the federal government is giving us just a one-time only hit. That will continue because it's a cost of living adjustment, which means it continues. When they do another cost of living adjustment, it's based off the prior cost of living adjustment from the prior year. Yes, we should be able to handle this. We are seeing increased revenue. We have seen increased revenue with regards to sales taxes. We are projecting a 1% growth on where we think we'll finish 2022, but we have seen increases in sales taxes, revenue that is. We haven't increased the tax rate. We're seeing new revenue. We are concerned, I should say, I am very concerned about what could happen in the next year. The New York Federal Reserve President, John Williams, joined me last week, actually here in the Rath Building, and his staff, and we had a very, very good conversation about where we think the economy is going and what to expect. And while he wasn't going to make any specific predictions as to this is where it's exactly going to be, he does expect inflation to moderate, but that there may be a recession as a result of that, to getting there, so to speak. So we are just being very conservative on the sales tax estimate. But yes, we feel comfortable that we'll be able to meet these obligations in the future with incoming revenue. And if we do have increased sales tax above our projections, well, then that covers any new, or provides us new money that we weren't anticipating. Any other comments or questions on the topic? I can't imagine you'd have any other questions on any other topics. So I'll open it up to see if there are any questions on any other topics. Braden. I'll go to Braden. You got a question? Braden? No, okay. Ron, go ahead.
You know, the CBA, everybody's wondering about it. Some people have even speculated that is what is holding up getting the stadium deal done. Knowing again that you've got another deadline, and I know you said that in past negotiations, these things can just take time. But are we getting to a point here where we're starting, some parties maybe realizing that this is not as easy as they thought originally it might be? Not that you did, but maybe others. And as optimistic that we've got a done deal here. Are there still too many loose ends there?
The question was with regards to the Bills agreement, and it's taking a little longer than some people thought, not necessarily as long as I thought it would take, in other sticking points. We've negotiated for quite a number of weeks now, and we still have almost every one of the agreements that still has to be finalized. Not all the terms are agreed to for all the agreements. Not just one agreement, most of the agreements. And they're very complicated agreements. The construction coordination agreement in some ways is the most complicated agreement of all, because it determines how money is going to be spent, the requirements for MWBE participation, the issues associated with when you put your money in, how it gets taken out, how it gets approved, who's going to approve any construction changes. That's complicated. It is not simple. When people say, well, how's it taking so long? I said, just remember, if you've ever had a house constructed, nevertheless, if you bought a new house and all the documents you sign when you get a mortgage, you know how long it takes, you sign in 40, 50 documents. But then if you've built a house, you've got construction documents, you have construction loan documents, everything associated with that, how it converts over to a long-time permanent loan and the documents associated with that for a $200,000 or $400,000 house. Think about what happens when you build a $1.4 billion stadium and you have multiple parties. It's complicated. I never thought that this was going to come very quickly. I thought this was going to take time. Because they're very complicated agreements. I can tell you, every day I get updates directly from our counsel and see the new versions that are coming back and forth on different documents. And then we offer our comments and send those on to the state and the Bills for their comments. That happens every day. So we're progressing, and everyone is working in earnest to get this deal done. I never thought it was going to get done by the time period that was originally announced. That's why there was a provision in the original MOU that said if we're working earnestly towards a completion, we can extend the deadline. And I feel very confident that you're going to see the same thing happen with regards to an extension of the deadline, which is technically tomorrow, I guess. I feel you're going to hear very soon. Actually, I know you're going to hear very soon. An extension of the deadline, but we have to sign that document first.
When is the new deadline then?
When it comes out, I'll announce it. But it's, let's put it this way. Remember how I've been telling everybody we can't do anything until SEEKR's completed, the State Environmental Quality Review Act? We can't sign a document until that's completed. And that's not going to get completed until early December. So you can kind of base it off that.
One thing quickly in the MOU, and I know you can't discuss negotiations directly, but in the MOU, there's something in there about substantial penalties spelling out if the Bills were tried to leave. Have those penalties ever been defined numerically?
Yes, it's a percentage. It's a percentage of the investment that is a declining amount based on every year we go further from the construction. and that's part of the negotiations that's going on. But that's actually less contentious, because we have a standard that we set with the renovation, where the penalties, if they tried to move during or after the renovation, we would get a certain amount back. That's going to be all in the documents. And the final numbers are going to be seen, so everyone will understand if the Bills tried to break the lease and they were allowed to move, how much money they'd have to pay to the community.
So those numbers are still being worked out.
Well, I wouldn't say still being, I think we have an agreement on the percentages, is how that would go. No, I'm not going to share them at this point. Because we have a general term, we have a general agreement that until every agreement is completed and all terms are agreed to, theoretically, no terms are agreed to. Because if we agree to something and then we agree something else and it changes the impact of the prior term that we agreed to, we'd have to go back and take a look at it. So the general thought is, when we're ready, and we'll issue the full agreement, all full agreements, and there's going to be a lot. You'll have a better idea. But this is not that much different than what we did in the renovation, and we had this agreed to in the renovation, where there was a declining percentage on how much the Bills would have to pay if they left after the renovation, based on what the county and the state had previously contributed, which, if you remember, we talked about a $400 million penalty clause then, and then it would decline year to year to where theoretically in the last year of the renovation lease it would be zero. So we're going to follow a similar formula. Sandra.
In your last negotiated deal over the stadium, you had said that even after you agreed to the major terms of the agreement, there were a number of things that fell apart and had to be renegotiated afterward. How is this different and how is this similar? Or is it different? I remember when you talked about the major terms of the agreement for this deal, you didn't think there would be major renegotiation over any of the major points.
I don't want to get into the specifics, but I just say we're working together earnestly to reach the agreement. They're very complicated agreements. But everyone seems to be holding true to the terms of the MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, or MOU, and Memorandum of Understanding, which is the county's going to put in $250 million. The state's going to put in $600 million. The Bills are responsible for the remainder, a portion of which will be paid for by personal seat licenses. So what was seen in the MOU, those major terms, that hasn't changed. It's getting it documented in very complicated agreements that is being resolved and dealt with right now. And I'll give you a good example. Erie County owns the land where the community college sits, but it's owned for the community college purpose. So the SUNY Board of Trustees eventually has to approve the transfer and out usage of the land for community college purposes. So last week, or a week and a half ago, the Community College Board of Trustees approved the transfer, basically, of the usage of the land. That's something that all has to be part, and the attorneys had to work on, and that's one facet of it that was completed publicly, but that's the kind of stuff that has to happen before we can say, here's the final deal documents. And then I take them to the legislature for their final approval. This is complicated.
And the lease, a new lease agreement, because I know that's part of the whole process here, is getting something where, while the stadium is being built, they gotta have a home to play in, so that's part of the whole.
Yes, it's what happens, there's interim agreements. We have to extend the existing agreements to do interim agreements while the current facility, or I should say the new facility, is being built. There's permanent agreements for the long term. It's kind of like a construction loan for a house. You have a construction loan for a house, and then you have to enter into the final loans for your mortgage and so forth. So we're basically working on the short-term agreements, the non-relocation agreement, the extension of the lease agreement, the extension of the sublease agreement because of the way it's written. There's lots and lots of documents. And it just takes time. And I thought it was going to take time, and it is. But there's good work that's being done by all to knock out additional terms and agreements. And hopefully soon we'll be able to say we're done. We're just not there yet. Leah.
Talk a little bit more about the sheriff's office and the challenges it's facing with recruiting and retaining officers and how that's impacting taxpayers, and then also how this budget
Well, the sheriff's office has had a problem in its jail management division with regards to staffing. They're required to provide a certain number of people at any one time to provide security at the holding center downtown and the correctional facility in Alden. And if they don't have enough people available to fill those, they have to still fill the position. So they can mandate overtime. Very few places where you can mandate overtime. You tell someone who's just worked an 8-hour shift, you have to stay and work another 8-hour shift. So that's the problem that they've been dealing with correctional health. They're losing employees who are quitting because they're just like, I don't want any more of this. So what we're doing is we're adding more employees so that when someone's 8-hour shift is over with, they can go home. They're not forced to work another 8-hour shift until they get someone else that replaces them after 16 hours, because they can't really work more than 16 hours for legal purposes. So the impact is right now we're paying a lot in forced overtime, and the goal is, because overtime is paid at a higher rate than regular time. So the goal is, if we create these new positions, we'll reduce the forced overtime, which will reduce the cost to the county by paying at the higher rate that overtime's paid, and we'll keep our employees who will feel satisfied because they're working an 8-hour day and not being forced to do 16-hour shifts, and then leaving completely burned out, knowing they got to come back to work in 8 hours and do it all over again. So this will hopefully alleviate that problem.
But there's still going to be an issue with recruiting, because that's been an issue, right?
There's been an issue with recruiting. I believe they have a class coming up where they're going to train new individuals. But I think by telling the folks and showing that we're making a commitment to invest in the sheriff's office, correctional divisions, it'll make it a little easier on recruiting purposes, because people will say, well, you know, I don't mind going there and working if I got an 8-hour day. I don't want to go take a job there if I'm going to be forced to work 16 hours for 4 days in a row. So I think this will help with recruitment, and the sheriff has said he believes it will help with the recruitment too. Same thing in the district attorney's office. The increased salaries should help with the recruitment and put them at a level where they should be. The current starting salary for an assistant district attorney is $60,000. And if you know what it costs to go to law school and have law school loans, and I went to law school, that's not a lot of money in today's day and age, considering what you could make in the private sector with law firms. So we're basically increasing the starting salary to $75,000 in the district attorney's office, which we believe will certainly help them with recruitment and will eliminate the problems they face right now. Any other questions?
Back on the Bill Stadium, the MOU made some hints here and there that sustainability, eco-friendly stuff is going to be part of the new stadium, and a lot of other NFL stadiums that have been built in the last decade, they kind of go for LEED certification. Can you comment on whether or not getting LEED certification for this new stadium is part of the talks?
I do not believe that they'll be getting LEED certification, but I can tell you it is going to be much more economically friendly or environmentally friendly than it is right now. And I'll give you two big examples. First off, on electricity usage, that stadium is a complete terrible draw and costly for powering it, because it basically has electrical systems that were designed in the 1970s, and you can replace some light bulbs and things like that, but it is not an environmentally friendly stadium when it comes to the electricity load. And then stormwater, there is actually no stormwater plan at the current facility. Everything that's stormwater drains into Smokes Creek, which means everything that's in there goes into Smokes Creek. So if there's salt that's put down on the parking lots, that drains into Smokes Creek. There's nothing with regards to stormwater controls associated with the existing facility. That will exist with the new facility. It's part of the seeker analysis. They're actually going to release next week some updated seeker documents, so you should look forward to that, and included in that will be the environmental components associated with it. Off the top of my head, I do not believe they're seeking LEED certification, but I do believe, and I do know, it will be much more environmentally friendly in many aspects than the current facility and the complex is right now.
Have you heard any explanation as to why not seek LEED?
Cost. I know when we do LEED certification associated with buildings in Erie County, it adds 15 to 20% alone on the cost if we didn't do a LEED certified building. And we have a local law that provides that county-owned buildings, new ones, do need to have a LEED Silver certification. And the other thing too is it's an open air facility, so it makes it a lot tougher to do LEED certification regarding the heating elements and stuff like that when you still will have technically an open air facility. But it is going to be much more environmentally friendly. That I can guarantee you. Just on the reduction in electricity, which of course means a reduction in the powering and the production of electricity, as well as stormwater. We're going to have a complete stormwater system to control the release of stormwater so that it just doesn't go straight into Smokes Creek like it does today, taking with it whatever the heck may be in the stormwater. All right, everyone, thank you very much. I hope you have a good weekend, and go Bills, beat the Chiefs. Take care. Thank you, Kendra.